Welcome, everybody, to SiriusXM NHL Network Radio's Memorabilia Moments. I am Rob Brender. As we do each week on this show, we are going to take a look at one of the great memorabilia collections around the globe. And we're talking game-used jerseys, equipment, sticks, anything you can think of. And in some cases, these are Hall of Fame collections, and I think we are going to see one of those in particular today. We are joined by Jason Seidel, who, as you'll be able to see here in just a moment, has an unbelievable collection of New Jersey Devils game-worn gear. And as I said, it spans from game-worn jerseys from the 1980s, 1990s, all the way through the present. And we're going to talk to one of the great New Jersey Devils players of all time. A stalwart on the blue line for the Devils is going to join us here in just a second as well to talk about some of the items from the collection of Jason that he actually wore during the course of his 20-year career with the Devils. It is three-time Stanley Cup champion, Kenny Daneyko. Ken, it's great to get to have you on the show. How are you?
I'm doing good, Rob. Thanks for having me. And it seems like I'm looking in the background of your of this virtual tour here, and you got Claude Lemieux, one of my favorites in the Montreal Canadiens jerseys, or jersey, shall I say. But he helped us win a few of those championships that you had mentioned earlier.
He most certainly did. And oh, by the way, Jason also happens to have some Devils Claude Lemieux, so we'll show those here in just a second, and some of them were from the championship runs that you mentioned. And oh, by the way, I actually am kind of curious about this as we get started. I know a lot of players, especially when they're in their younger days in the 1980s, they didn't know about the value of jerseys or their equipment. And so sometimes you kind of passed it along. I'm just curious, before we talk about Jason's collection, were you one of those guys that actually held on to a lot of your stuff? Do you have your game-worn gear from your career?
Well, unfortunately, I'm one of those guys that didn't pay too much attention to it, and I wish I had along the way more often. Yeah, I've got a few Stanley Cup jerseys along the way, but for people that don't know, way back in the 80s and 90s, it was not easy to get your jersey. They didn't just hand it to you. I mean, you had to sneak it out in your bag. You had to somehow find a way to get your jersey, because usually a lot of the times the organization kept your jerseys. That was the case way back in my heyday. But obviously, when we won the Stanley Cup a few occasions, we were able to keep the jerseys. I moved a few times. I didn't keep things organized very well. I was one of those guys that just didn't pay too much attention to it. And I kind of wish I did now, because I always tell my wife along the way here, I go, geez, where's that jersey? Where's this memorabilia or whatever I may have had? I've got boxes of stuff because I've moved a few times, but no, I wish I paid a little more attention, but I have a few things.
Well, guess what? Jason's going to have a few things of yours as well, as I mentioned. And so maybe, just maybe, after this whole thing is over, you can convince him to let a few things go and you get a few things back. Who knows? You never know.
Well, Jason, he had to pay. That's exactly the point I was making. A lot of the different teams, they sold these jerseys. That's why they hung on to them, and they made a profit off them. And guys like Jason were able to, that were collectors, able to purchase some pretty special jerseys along the way, amongst other things.
Absolutely. And one of the cool things about, especially with Jason's collection, as we're going to see here right now, is he does such a wonderful job of preserving the items. When you see them in displays like this, you really feel like you're in the Hall of Fame. I mean, it might as well be the Devils Hall of Fame in Jason's basement. So Jason, first of all, hello to you. I haven't said hello yet. How are you? Everything good?
Everything's good. Good to be here.
It's great to have you. And so I know you have an incredible span of 20 or 30 years of jerseys behind you. And I see some captaincies and some A's, some of the biggest players and best players in Devils history. I know you have a lot of Kenny stuff. Let's take a look at some of the stuff that you have from Ken's career. I know you had the 91-2 really fascinates me, because that's a double patched year. The Devils wore the 75th anniversary of the NHL on the upper right shoulder. I guess it's maybe the upper right breast, and then also there's a 10-year anniversary patch. Right?
You'll see the Devils did the 10th anniversary on the lower hem of that. They did it for both sets, set 1 and set 2, unless you were an emergency call-up or something. Like some of the guys didn't get the 10th anniversary. I believe when Brodeur got called up, I don't think his originals did, because remember, he was an emergency call-up when they called him up from the juniors. That one's actually, believe it or not, behind me as well. You'll see that with the 9 on it back there. There was set 1 and set 2. Set 2 of this particular was just worn in the playoffs. So the set 1s had a lot of good wear on them. So a lot of a lot of the scrapes and the burns and the rips, and they all ended up getting repaired. I don't know if we can see these up here, by the team, and you get a lot of repair work, all on things. Somebody like Ken would put a ton of wear on these things, and the team trainer would then, he would keep them busy probably well into the night, sewing these things back up. And so that was one of the great things about this set, the first set, is that it got a lot of wear on it. And collectors obviously like a lot of wear in jerseys.
Yeah, Kenny, you must remember 91 too pretty fondly. Last year of wearing the green and red jerseys for you guys till you went to the black, which was quite a change and actually made quite a statement. I know a lot of fans miss the green and red now, but you look back at that season, Scott Stevens joins the Devils that year, so a huge year for you guys. Do you remember that year vividly? Do you remember when Scott came over and what an impact he had on the team?
Oh, well, certainly. I mean, I always wanted to be, even when he was my opponent and we were banging heads along the way when he was a Washington Capital. We had some pretty good playoff series against Scotty and his team. I always wanted to be a poor man Scott Stevens. That was my MO. I said, I'm going to be Scott Stevens. We were drafted the same year. I wasn't quite as talented, but played kind of that same robust style. So I'd always used to say, I don't think I can get to Scott Stevens' level, but I want to be, along those lines. And we knew we were starting to, sorry, I got my dogs barking here in the background. I apologize for that. There must be something else, some dogs outside. I have two dogs that I adore, Westie and a Golden Doodle. So I'm going outside. They're staying inside. They're barking at some dogs walking by in the front.
No problem at all.
Anyway, but I remember when we got Scotty, it was, the pieces were all starting to come together for us. We were becoming a better team, and it started in '88 when Lou Lamoriello came aboard, and we made the playoffs for the first time and had a real good run. Went one game away from the Eastern Conference Finals, losing in Game 7 of the Bruins to go to the Stanley Cup Finals. And we were a young group coming together, and we just needed to add some pieces. You need that goaltender, that all-world goaltender, and we'd hope to find that eventually, and we did with Brodeur. But we had Scott Niedermayer coming, drafted 3rd overall, that guy that can control the tempo of a game from the back end. But we were building from the back end out. Now we got one of the best in Scott Stevens. And we had to give up a heck of a player. Obviously, it was a kind of a unique situation where we were awarded Scott Stevens in arbitration, and that was a terrific move by Lou Lamoriello. Both those guys ended up going into the Hall of Fame. Shanahan with 600-plus goals, but Stevens was a perfect fit for us along the way. And I don't know if he was too excited, and he'll admit it. He wasn't very excited to leave St. Louis. He really enjoyed it there, and Lou worked his magic to get Scotty over, and the rest is history. But that's the last of those jerseys where black and red was more popular as far as his merchandising along the way. And you're absolutely right. Now when we go back to retro jerseys, we all look at the red and green fondly, when everybody back then was going, oh, those are ugly Christmas tree colors along the way. But yeah, some crazy times. It's way back and a long time ago. I'm sure Jason has a few blood stains on there when the game was played a little more robust.
You got some blood stains on there, Jay, to show us? I'm sure you got a few.
Well, the blood stains, typically when you look at the older shirts, they when there's real blood and not just like somebody wearing them a little bit, they come in and they're like a grayish tone. So I have I can't know the name. I have a Rob Skurlak. Albany River Rat. So he fights Trevor Doyle and opens up Doyle just like a stuck pig. And Doyle just is bleeding everywhere. This jersey has got like blood splotches when you hold it up to the light everywhere. I actually emailed Rob about the fight, and he said from his recollection, he said Doyle got over like 20 stitches in that fight. But it was one of those things where he opened them up, and then this guy just hung all over him. So the opponent bled all over the jersey. And so they try to bleach him out, but you could see him as sort of light gray marks all in a lot of the jersey.
Yeah. By the way, Jason, you also have, I know you have some fight jerseys from Ken there, right? Or some jerseys that you were able to match.
Well, you have to look at some of the history of the jerseys. And I have about, I think 8 of Dano's jerseys, 7 Devils and one I think will surprise him when I show it to him. And, one of which I'll pull out here through a little quick research work on my part. This is his 95-96. He wore it in set 1, so at the beginning of the season. You can see he's got the A, and one of the things Dano did, or at least the trainer did for him for a while, is, and you can see this, they extended the collar. You'll see this a lot in his sort of 94 through 96 jerseys. You'll see the extended collar. I have like 3 or 4 of them like this. But in this jersey, Ken ends up fighting a future teammate in Turner Stevenson. So you go toe-to-toe with Turner in this jersey, Ken.
Yeah, I actually remember that battling Turner, and what a great teammate he was. Loved him coming over and winning a Stanley Cup with him. And when we to explain why the jersey altering back then for so many different players, we all tried to find that advantage when we did have to drop the mitts if you were so inclined to engage in those types of things when it was more prevalent, obviously. And so sometimes it was to get out of the jersey easier. I went back and forth with the real loose arms, where we'd extend the sleeves a lot, that you could pull your arm out, or I'd go really tight where somebody couldn't grab on. So try different ways to alter jerseys and different ideas along the way, always talking with the trainers and certain players, what's going to be to our advantage as far as the scrap, and you tried to figure that out along the way. So it's kind of comical now when I think about it, but we did a lot of different things and tried to get creative to get the advantage if we could at all in some type of scrap.
And you had a lot of them. And by the way, so Jason and I were talking about this yesterday as we were planning out this show and trying to figure out which jerseys we were going to show. And every jersey he pulled out, Ken, he had a different fight that you were involved in that had some story attached to it. I mean, literally, how many scraps were you in? Do you remember in your career? It's got to be an incredible number.
Well, I if I'm not mistaken, and even the hockeyfights.com, which I still go to and still enjoy watching every once in a while, although I love the evolution of the game and where it's gone, because I've gone with the times, no question about it. But that was our era, and there were some crazy times, some fun times, some scary times along the way. But I did most of my fighting in the first 5 years. I think I had 136 majors, officially, unofficially, but a lot of that was in the first 7-8 years, really. And fortunately, I was able to develop my game, and you get a little more room. But that was kind of a way of getting my foot in the door, or part of it anyway, was being tough and having to scrap and protect teammates along the way. And you usually got noticed a little bit more. But as I got older a little bit, and as I was getting more ice time along the way, I let the bigger, stronger young kids that came in and start doing it like the Oliwas of the world when they came to the organization, and the Troy Crowders, even when he was a youngster coming up and a scary individual. And he did it so calmly, by the way. But yeah, 136 majors, and like I said, the majority of those were in the first 7-8 years, because after that, I'd probably had anywhere from 4 to 8 fights a year, really. But in the early going, it was always 15 to 20 a year. But fortunately, I wasn't one of those guys that had to do it for a span of 20 years. And I respect those guys a great deal that were able to hang around that long and have, I think Ty Domi, who's a good friend of mine now, and we hated each other when we played and fought numerous times when he was a New York Ranger. And he thanked me after his career and said, I always thank you for accepting my challenge. I was a youngster. I had to get my foot in the door as well. And I said, Ty, I really didn't want to. Your head was just way too hard. But I think he had 300 majors in his career. I think he has the most fighting majors in the National Hockey League ever. I mean, think about that. That's a long time to be having to answer the bell night in, night out, because of his longevity. And he skated well enough and played well enough to play a long time. But he really didn't slow down his fisticuffs. He was always relied upon to protect teammates every night for, 15, 16 years. So, but boy, I had some fun every time he'd come after me at the Garden. He says, we're going to go right away. I go, oh, Ty, not again. And I go, all right, here we go. I'm not going to back down from you. So here we go again. And then finally, when he went to Toronto, and this is a funny story because we talk a lot now. Like I said, you find out you're a lot alike, and he's a great guy. He goes, I wasn't fighting you anymore, asking you anymore when you got to Toronto. You were getting a little older, and, he says, there was other guys to take on after that. I said, thank you, Ty. I appreciate that,
man. You got too old to fight. That's funny. The elder statesman. By the way, so speaking of getting hit in the head a lot, Jason, do you have the helmet with you or somewhere near you? I want to take a look at this. Ken, you had one of the more unique looking helmets throughout your career. I always found it to be just a cool look, and I always associated that helmet with you. Jay, what year is this helmet from?
This is probably, I would say, somewhere between 93 and 96 on Ken's side. You could see the protective thing from the ear for the ears there. You know, Ken wasn't a big visor guy, as he'll tell you. You know, this obviously came from Migray when the Devils sold a lot of their equipment. But...
Well, I will tell you, and I started with the Cooper helmet, and that was probably the best helmet if you're going to get into some scraps along the way. But this, I switched a little bit with the times, a little sleeker helmet. But I did wear the earpieces. A lot of people, some guys did, some didn't. And the main reason, again, was was because of protected ears. When you got clobbered in the ear and a scrap or even a hit or shoulder or elbow to the ear, a lot of guys wouldn't do it. I'm saying I don't care about the look. I'm going to protect my ears because I get hit there a lot in numerous ways. So I use that little plastic covering over the ears. Again, as much advantage as you could get as far as trying to protect yourself a little bit.
Absolutely. By the way, how did you pick out what helmet you wanted to wear throughout your career in terms of just the make and the style?
Well, like I said earlier, the early part of my career, the Cooper was the best fighting helmet for sure.
There you go.
It didn't look the best, so I wanted to, you know, be a little more fashionable. And the one Jason just showed you, I think that was the CCM one, right? And so I switched back and forth, but no rhyme or reason. Like I said, mostly for protection, I guess, along the way. The Cooper was a little more scary looking helmet as well, and it would go below the eyebrows, so you looked a little meaner. I mean, you got to have any advantage you can get, and if you could put a little fear in your opponent every once in a while, that was a good thing. And sometimes a helmet was part of the getup.
Absolutely. By the way, so one last thing here before we wrap it up. I know Jason had a meeting where I think you were at a show maybe at some point, Jay, you were telling me, and Kenny was there, and Ken wanted to see his sticks more than he wanted to see anything else, if I'm not mistaken. Was that right, Jay?
Yeah, I know, and unfortunately they're still in storage, but I remember, Ken, you came by my table at one of these Jersey shows. I you know, I knew you were going to be there, so I had all your shirts there, and you just made a beeline right for the sticks. I had an 87, 88 that my buddy Craig gave me, one of your teammates, and I had one from 91, 92. So, I mean, the old wood ones, like the real wood hockey sticks, like players nowadays would never use wood, right? And but back in the day, that's what the players all used. So, but he really liked the sticks.
Well, because I went through so many different kinds, Titan, Coho, Sherwood, and that was in the early 80s using Sherwood. But I love just feeling the sticks because a lot of the guys today could train with them. They were so heavy. I mean, I didn't collect much. One thing I did get after a playoff series in the early 90s was a Mary Lemieux stick. I don't know why I asked him. I said, you mind if I have your stick? And I still haven't collected. Now, here's one of the greatest players of all time, if not the greatest, along with Gretzky and obviously Wayne and Mario 1-2 that ever played this game. I'd like to see some players. Now, we know how light these sticks are and graphites and so forgiving and everything else as far as they snap so easily. The lighter the better for these guys, and they have magician type hands as we see. I'd like to see some of these young stars today try to do what Mario Lemieux did with his Coho stick. Take a look. If you ever get a chance to take a look or feel his Coho black stick that he used in the early 90s, that he was putting up 60, 70, 80 goals a year and 200 points. I mean, this thing is the heaviest. It's 5 pounds, I'm telling you. And he handled it pretty well, didn't he, with his incredible mitts. But it's amazing to see the evolution of all the equipment and stuff as well, because I go into the room now and grab a Nico Hischier stick or a Jack Hughes stick or whatever, and these young guys, they are so light. I don't even know how they use them. They're too light, I would imagine, but that's just the way it's gone. But it always amazed me. The Mario Lemieux stick was the heaviest thing I've ever felt, and he certainly danced a lot of defensemen with it.
Yes, he did, like a tree trunk. And it's different, I guess, when you're cross-checking somebody with that thing as compared to these twigs that'll break right now so easily. It actually made a difference back then, I'm sure, and it hurt quite a bit when you got those things across your back. At least I would think.
Good point, Rob. And that was the reason I used the thicker shaft, because you know we didn't want it to break, and we were able to get away with a little more around the net. And that's why I have the utmost respect for the greats in my era, like the Lemieux and Bossies and guys that really, and Yoggers, he played forever, but they really had to pay the price, man. I don't envy being a defenseman today where it's all body position because you just nick a guy and it gets called. And I've gone with the time, so I understand it. I wish they could battle a little more in front, but having said that, that's the way the game has gone. But boy, those guys took a lot of punishment back in the day, I'll tell you, around that net with some pretty heavy lumber and the wood sticks that Jason's talking about.
Absolutely. Before we wrap it up, Jay, I want to be able to show Ken and also the folks that are watching this what's behind you in that display. So can you take us just really quickly through everything that you have in there?
I can take you real quickly here. Hopefully I can do this with the thing. So I had this display done. It is a 16-foot long floor-to-ceiling display case, all cedar to protect the jerseys, Hall of Fame style storage underneath. And then there's built-in storage over here for jerseys because obviously I clearly have a problem and a sickness in buying jerseys.
There could be worse things, Jay.
Yeah, look, there's worse things in life, absolutely.
There could be a lot worse addictions. I know about that.
in the display case, you'll see, right behind me right there with a 9 on it, that's Marty Berdore's first ever jersey. Directly behind me, you'll see that's Nina Meyer's first point jersey. Next to that is a little bit of unfortunately, a little glare, but that's Marty's Cup Raiser from 2000. Behind that, there's Claude Lemieux's 95 Stanley Cup jersey. I got that right off Claude. And then directly behind me with the 75th, that's a Driver Captain's and a Stevens alternate. And the interesting thing there is if you look in the insides of the jerseys, Driver was injured for about 2 games, and Stevens wears that exact C on that jersey. So they took it off and put it on. They popped it back on again. So it's interesting to see. And, there's also behind me on my right ear, there's Slava's first ever NHL jersey. And then in the corner, I'm just to get rid of the glare here, see if I can see you. So that right there is Brendan Shanahan's NHL debut jersey next to the Claude I was talking about. So the Shanny's an interesting story. I ended up buying it off of the guy that used to run Eagle Hockey. And he was in London, Ontario, and Shanahan apparently donated it to a charity event, like a charity golf event for an auction, the summer after his rookie year. So I guess, Ken, he must have snuck it out in one of the bags that you were talking about back in the old days.
That's great. Great history. And you've got a story for every jersey. It's pretty remarkable, man. That is certainly a collection behind you, no question. I love it. Obviously, I'm biased. I've been here forever and fortunate to win some Stanley Cups with some great teams, and some historic jerseys there and players in the background brings back great memories for sure, pal.
Absolutely. And that is, as I said at the top, a Hall of Fame collection. I think the Devils themselves wish they had that one hanging up in the arena in Newark. Maybe one day they'll bribe you to see if they can at least borrow a few.
We can arrange a loan, I think.
There you go. A loan. Yes. Do not keep. Kenny, it has been a pleasure to have you for this. Jason, same thing. Really appreciate both of you guys doing it. And it's always fun to look at these great collections and to be able to hear some great stories from Kenny along the way. That was fabulous. So thanks to both of you. Really appreciate it very much.
Well, thanks for having me.
Pleasure, guys. It was enjoyable for sure. I want some of those jerseys one day, Jason. I don't know what I'm gonna have to do. We'll figure out some bartering.
Sounds like a plan. Hey, listen,
initiative eventually.
There you go.
Enjoy them, man. Enjoy them.
All right, folks. That has been SiriusXM NHL Network Radio's Memorabilia Moments. We'll see you next week.